So hi, my name's Jo Brophy and I work for the PRCA. So today I'm really pleased to welcome three people in the media across South Africa. And this session will be led by our PRCA NextGen committee members, both Lerato and Brenda. We're really keen to do this session actually, and to really help people both new into the industry and just thinking about coming into the industry, build relationships with media and what that looks like and how the landscape might have changed. So with that, I'll pass over to both of our committee members. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jo, and welcome to everyone. We're really excited about today's webinar because it talks to meeting the media. And as a PR practitioner, I can tell everyone for free that media relations will always be your currency, regardless of how high you are or what position you're in. But before we delve into our discussion for today, let me just do a brief intro of myself, and then I will hand over to Lerato. My name is Brenda Sono. I am a senior account manager at Eclipse Communications. Always had a vested interest in PR. I guess it's because I like talking and I like engaging with people, but above all, I really love sharing brand stories. And this is where these sort of webinars are so crucial, because as much as I like sharing my brand stories, I want to make sure I share them with the correct media. I'll then hand over to Lerato to introduce herself, and then our panelists, who are our esteemed media, will also give you guys a brief intro of who they are, which publications or radio stations they work for, and just sort of what they cover from a content perspective.
Thank you so much, Brenda, and welcome to everyone. My name is Lerato Motloung. Just a brief intro, I am a PR account manager at an agency called Hook, Line and Sinker, which is based in Cape Town. And I'm also one of the PRCA African NextGen committee members. And I'm super, super thrilled and excited to have you all here with us. Brief history into my industry, it just spans back all the way to 2017. And my interest in public relations just stemmed from being able to be a storyteller and just looking at media relations as me being the Cupid and trying to set up the media and my client or an event or whatever brand I'm working on a blind date, and connecting them to share that story and to be able to be the storyteller behind it all. So yeah, hence this amazing session that we have built today and prepared for you guys. We're all about maintaining and building relations with the media. So yeah, I think I can then just hand over to our guests, our esteemed media, so that they can also just briefly introduce themselves.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Keneilwe Tlholoe. I am executive producer for Business Features at Business Day TV. So what we focus on really is business, economics, finance, and market news. We also focus on SME education. Yeah, since it's something that, has become key in terms of, building our societies. How I fell into journalism, really, my brother was my biggest inspiration. I used to call him my human encyclopedia because he had answers to everything. So, him loving journalism sparked an interest. So we're both journalists from the Tlholoe clan. And I've just been doing that for a while. And that's just me.
Hi everyone, my name is Sibabalwe Sesmani. I am the group CEO of Unorthodox Group. At Unorthodox Group, we facilitate media interviews for our clients. So I'm a PR practitioner. I think I've just always been fascinated with the relationship between brands, whether it's companies, whether it's personalities or individuals, and the media, and how you can get to link those and make sure that those both work. So then a PR practitioner would then come in and be the intermediary and make sure that you've matched the right brand, the right personality, the right company, the right campaign, the right event with the right type of media as well. I think over the years as well, I've just had a keen interest on the media side to how also media accepts PR practitioners, how that relationship works, and also just the best way of finding synergy between that relationship, because I do think that it's important from a PR perspective, but I also do think it's important from a media perspective as well. So I'm looking forward to engaging with everyone today and also just learning as much as I can as well. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Amy. I'm the producer on Views and News with Clarence here on Cape Chalk. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. There isn't a show that I haven't worked on. It's exciting, it's to the last second, it's fun. And I always knew I wanted to go into media because I always was a forward child. I wanted to know the big words. I wanted to read the adult books. I wanted to discover and learn about all these other things. So I knew I was going to go into media. I just didn't know which avenue. And I was very surprised that I ended up in radio. It was a serendipitous story that happened. I really thought I was going to go into magazines, but that's a story for another day. And yeah, I'm very excited for this because I feel like PR, media, sometimes there's a bit of a love-hate relationship. We don't always understand one another. And I think this is just so important in building good relationships, right? Because that's what we want to do, so that we all are on the same page.
Thank you so much, everyone. To people that have dialed in and are watching the webinar, please feel free to make use of the chat just to engage and ask us questions. And if you do have a question that you'd like to directly ask to one of our panelists, please do make use of the Q&A sort of option to drop us your questions there. And we will be sure to keep an eye out for those and to make sure we answer them. We can also just drop our details at the end of the session where you can just send through any post-event or post-webinar questions you might have for us. I think just to get the conversation going, Amy did allude to the fact that there's always been this love-hate relationship between PR practitioners and the media, which is always so weird because I think we both need each other in order to exist. It needs to be a relationship that we constantly nurture. We want to make sure we're making your lives easier, and you want to make sure you're landing those top stories. But I think if you guys could just give me or share an overview rather of just how the media landscape has changed. I mean, we obviously went through COVID, and I'm sure Lerato can step in here, but for us as PR practitioners during COVID times, it was a whole shock because I was used to our clients throwing events and we would invite you guys and you would cover the story, and it gives you that time to have some face-to-face interaction with our clients and draft your own stories. And now we started making use of things such as webinars and online virtual events, which was quite a mind shift for me. But it would be interesting for us to know how the media landscape has changed for each and every one of you, and how do we now adjust with you guys as well, because there's that need to do so.
Just to add on to that, Brenda, I mean, I feel like we have been kept on our toes since COVID as PR practitioners. The industry is evolving, like we're being introduced to many things. Many publishing houses are closing, more journalists are going independent, we're being introduced to podcasts. There's many different ways to start pitching to like broadcast producers now. So I'm 100% with you there. We're kept on our toes, and we on the other side as PR practitioners want to know from you as the media, with the ever evolving landscape, how we formulate those relationships with you guys and what it is exactly that can help maintain those relationships. As you mentioned, that we have a love and hate relationship. How do we make sure it remains love all the time and we just build and maintain this relationship?
Okay, I'll go first. It's been a real shock to the system. Obviously during the shutdown, obviously during the pandemic. It was this, we couldn't have in-studio guests. We had technology challenges where a guest might not have a Zoom, or they don't know how to access a Google MS Teams. It was manic. It was really, really, really difficult. And especially if you think of certain conversations that need to be had face-to-face, we couldn't facilitate that. Then load shedding made it even worse because now we have a guest, the guest is on the line, load shedding hits, signal drops, can't get through to the guest. And it's happened to me myself, finding out that the person that you have set up has passed away during COVID. It was rough. And then, of course, as well, but this is just from my perspective, there's the rise of influencers, and how do we as media compete with influencers that are like, they have a significant portion and they are influencing people and people like what they have to say. How do I compete with that? Because it's all competing for attention, right? So it's been really tricky. But something that you alluded to earlier on is about storytelling. That's what it boils down to. And those are the pitches and the conversations that still win. When you tell a story, whether it's a hard-hitting story or a business story or a lifestyle story, if it boils down to effective storytelling, then it works. That's just...
Well, hi everyone. I think I agree with you, Amy. COVID really hit all of us, and we've had to really adjust how we do things. I think the biggest thing for us is the fact that we still aren't, even when people are able to move around now, we're still battling with getting people into studio, so that's been a challenge. During COVID and post-COVID, we're getting people who are despondent in coming into studio. Sometimes the connectivity is not the greatest and it impacts your show terribly. But we are all at the mercy of technology. So that's that. And then I think just to mention a couple of other things that have changed the media landscape is the fact that with social media, we are finding ourselves having to compete with unofficial reporters, that would break the stories first. And sadly, it influences, the public's perception, whether it's right or wrong. It's a story for another day, but you find stories breaking only for them to be fake news. So that's another a blow to the media industry, where we find ourselves having, to actually be on our toes in terms of social media. You actually have to be there. You have to live on social media as a, as a news person, as a journalist, as a media practitioner. You practically live on social media to ensure that the right stories are shared at the right time. Yeah, and I think the third biggest thing that we are finding ourselves faced with as journalists and media practitioners is the fact that, because, for example, with Business Day TV, we are a commercial TV station, right? We constantly have to now see which stories can be used for commercial value and which stories can be, free, I'll say free publicity, if I could put it that way, because, advertising has shrunk. Sponsorships have shrunk. We find ourselves having less and less sponsored shows on our channel. And as a journalist now, you're starting to also become a salesperson in that regard, because then, you can't just, you get into trouble with your with your sales team, where you just bring in everyone. You're looking at it from a journalistic perspective. They're expecting you to look at it from a commercial perspective. So at times you find that when you try and explain that to some PR practitioners, some get it, some don't. So that's where we are as media practitioners. We find ourselves really challenged, to play a both commercial and journalistic role, if I could put it that way.
And then, sorry, just to add on to that, the other tricky aspect is that commercial side doesn't always understand that, especially for TV and radio, the deadline is now. We can't do a pre-interview a week from now and then send a feedback report and then do another. No, it needs to be done tomorrow, today, please, it has to be done. So trying to juggle that, I completely agree with you, Keneilwe, is very tricky, trying to please both sides.
Absolutely. Siba, what are your thoughts in terms of how we've had to transition, especially because you've got such a strong PR practitioner background?
So I think I've got a slightly different perspective, I think for obvious reasons that come from the PR side. But I honestly think that COVID affected PR and comms more positively than it did negatively. Pre-COVID, I felt as though PR, especially in South Africa, was very boring and mundane, to be quite honest. A client comes to you, they need to have a media interview, you put together a press release, you said I felt I was bored. I felt like there was no innovation, there was no creativity. We were doing the run-of-the-mill stuff. But that's not all just from a PR perspective as well. I think a lot of companies in South Africa are very safe in terms of they don't really want to go for the wow campaigns that you can put together as a PR practitioner and actually just take a risk. I think a lot of companies in South Africa are like that. When COVID hit, I think luckily for us as a company, well, I guess it's all God at this point, we had started looking at digital avenues. I think I did say because I was so bored. I was thinking, how else can we PR? And we started looking at the digital side of things because I felt as though we were also very traditionally focused, your TV, your radio, but we could also see where social media was going. We could see the rise of podcasts. So we started looking more into that and doing a bit of research. So by the time COVID hit, I think as a company, we were in a great position to say, okay, traditionally, they have their issues with Zoom and people can't come in studio. But from a digital perspective, I think because we had almost pre-planned it or preempted for that to happen, it got a bit more exciting. I think as PR practitioners, we learned a bit more, not to just look at the traditional side of media, but we played around with digital. I know that, one of our clients that we had the Fashini Beauty launch on a webinar, for instance. We all didn't know how to put that together, but somehow we did. Media came in and they joined those webinars. We even had a virtual performance from Lera coming in. So I think it stretched us so much. And as a company and also as a PR practitioner myself, we have not been the same since then, which I think is in a good way. There are more platforms now that are popping up. I think Keneilwe touched on it. Amy or Keneilwe touched on it, that there's podcasting now. There's also influencers, but also interestingly enough, I was on a Twitter space last week where we were discussing ethics and transparency and how public relations plays a role in that. And it goes back to what Keneilwe was saying, that journalists now have to live on social media because there are fake stories that impacts ethics, that impacts transparency. So media and PR really, I think, should, I don't know why, Keneilwe, Amy, you'll let us know you don't like us as PR practitioners. Because I think, with the rise of fake stories, having a PR practitioner by your side can actually help you so that we maintain the ethics and transparency so that, when fake news breaks out, even though it might have ruined that company's image already or person, but just the authenticity to find out who are the PR practitioners for this company. Is it really true? It can actually cut down your own research time as well. So hopefully, going forward, we can find that beautiful relationship and there's just love and not hate. But I do really think that COVID did change quite a bit. But I think it also stretched us in ways of how do we do things differently. And it also allowed us to see how the world is changing. And how we need to move and change with the world. Especially with what's going on with the retrenchments and media houses closing down. It's absolutely terrible. But hopefully, with the right kind of innovation, wherever there's something bad going on, I believe something good can come out of that.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for that. I'm just going to hop over to one of our Q&A questions. So Zintle Geluk said, "Hi ladies, my question is, would you say the evolving landscape has changed drastically for the better or worse in the post-COVID era?" And I think Siba, you kind of touched on it from a PR practitioner's perspective. You did say that you think for us it's changed for the better. It's challenged us. It's made us more agile in terms of how we land our stories and how we communicate. Is there anything else perhaps from Keneilwe or Amy that you would say, COVID has changed the landscape for the better, or do you actually think it's changed it for the worse? And do you miss the good old times pre-COVID?
Okay, I'll go. I think it's a bittersweet type of situation because you know, the lovely thing about the change, the social media, the digitization that's coming with all these changes is the fact that things are starting to become more, responsive on the go. But is that good? Is it good that we don't sleep? We fall asleep with, phones in our hands because we're scared that we're going to miss out on TikTok, So for me, it's a bittersweet type of situation, especially when you look at things like, for example, when it came to AKA's death, the videos were there before, anyone knew that he had passed on. And as a journalist, I would have ensured that I protect that person, because at the end of the day, the ethics and codes of journalism is you don't show someone in that light, So, it's a very intricate one where it's good to have. We are much more aware, we're getting information out quicker, responsive. When you want answers, for example, from brands, if you have a query, you go to Twitter, it gets solved very easily. You know what I mean? So for me, it's a double-edged sword, I must say. It's a double-edged sword. It just depends on how it's used and how it's received.
I completely agree. I absolutely agree with you. And then I'd just say, we are the fourth estate. We are media. We are still very important. So, yes, there will be people breaking the story right and being the first one out of the box. But at the end of the day, when you Google a year later, then you'll find our stories there still, right? Because we've actually taken the time to slow it down, get the facts, do what we need to do, so that there's that bit of longevity. So I agree with her. There's pros and cons and wins and gains to everything, but yeah, it is what it is.
Thank you for that, Amy. Another question which we have, and I love this question because it's something that I struggle with, but it's from Rispel Benjamin, and she's asking, what captures media attention via email? I find that media doesn't necessarily respond via email / read media releases, but you're likely to get a response via phone or WhatsApp. So in essence, yeah, I think we're trying to find out which is the best way to communicate with you guys. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer a call? Because we know sometimes you are out on a story or it's during your editorial meetings, but which works best for you?
I'll go. For me, it's a mix of all. So if and I see some friends, hi Megan, hi Justine, I see some names, hi Ayanda. If we are cool like that, WhatsApp me. I'll respond. I'll take your call. If I don't know you and you don't even know my presenter and you don't even know the show I produce for and you don't even care about the content, how is it going to happen? It's not going to happen. We do read emails. You guys probably won't believe me, but we really do. It's just our inbox is big inboxes. And I like to refer back into my inbox and look at content, because Keneilwe will relate to this as well. Sometimes at the end of your week, and that's when you'll see a lot of feedback from us. We'll sit and we'll think, okay, this is what we've done for the week. Are there any follow-ups to the story? Are there any further angles that we can take? Then I'll sit in my inbox and go back and read again. So for me personally, I appreciate an email because you can also get all your talking points there. You get who the guest is. I appreciate that. WhatsApp, it's a bit more informal. But yeah, please know me first, eh? Don't just hit my DMs.
I agree, Amy. I agree. And my colleague Nonto I see she's on the charts. Her and I always discuss this, right? You've mentioned the fact that sometimes people will send you WhatsApp, right? No introduction, nothing. You don't have the person's name. You don't have their number stored. Hi, Keneilwe. Straight into the issue, so it catches you off guard. And also, I know as journalists, we are expected to be owls, but sometimes there's times that we also need to shut down. So if you're going to send me a press release at 12 o'clock at night, So for me, I think, yeah, it's that, Amy. I think you're right. It just depends on, personal relationships that we form along the way, for sure. Brenda and I met a while ago when we were working on a couple of stories. We've managed to build a relationship. It becomes easier for me to say, oh, this is Brenda. But for me, I think preferably if we are not there yet, an email is okay. I will do my best to ensure that I try and answer, and I always appreciate if someone comes back to me and says, Keneilwe, you haven't responded. Are you keen, or are you, because I would have missed the email, like you were saying, Amy. We have tons and tons of emails that come through daily. And you've also mentioned something, Amy, that I always talk to my colleague Nondo about, the fact that sometimes the pitches that come through seem like there was no thought processing, in a sense that, do you know the platform that you're pitching for? Do you understand what the platform is about? I'm happy to take someone through angles, right, in terms of how a story could work. But the thing is, you also have to have had a bit of squeeze in terms of looking at the channel. What do we offer? What, so that I'm better able to say, oh, okay, your angle is a bit off, come back. This is what we can do. But sometimes, and I don't know, Lerato, Brenda, and Siba, if, then it becomes a casting the net approach where you send out an email and see what you get back. Or, because if that's the case, then I'll be more forgiving in terms of the types of emails that come through. But sometimes I feel like sometimes, the press releases come through without proper due diligence in terms of the platform that someone is pitching for.
Just to touch on what you spoke of right now, Keneilwe, about casting the net. So I'm not defending agencies here, because we all know how agencies are sometimes, and it's under pressure, and you need to catch, like, you need to secure good quality coverage. But I think it's something that we as PR practitioners also need to work on, especially starting to implement it in agencies, because sometimes, you'll be under pressure. A client wants coverage, and then you just look at your media list and you're like, you know what? Go far and wide. And that doesn't always work, because it's like a spam approach. It's like, what are you even sending me? I don't talk about health, but you're sending me a health topic, which goes back to the research and actually looking what Keneilwe covers and what she produces, looking up what does Clarence Ford at Cape Talk like to talk about, what are his interests. So it's something we need to implement from ourselves as PR practitioners, but we also need to start speaking up in our workspaces, in our agencies, and actually being like honest and sincere with our clients, like, hey, we can't do this far and wide method anymore. It's not working, because journalists are tired, producers are overworked, and we also need to extend a bit of grace. And I also want to just shift the angle a little bit, because Siba actually touched on something so important, and she mentioned synergy and how we need to rely on one another more as PR practitioners and media practitioners. So I'm interested to know, and we also have a question here from Megan, which is aligned to that. How do we create that synergy? How do we build that bond where Keneilwe doesn't just wait for a press release to come, but she actually reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm looking for this type of content. Do you have something to share? So Megan asked, as media practitioners, how much do you rely on PR agencies for news stories, launches, etc.?
Hi, Megan. I'm going to answer that. We rely on you guys so much, if I'm honest, just from two perspectives. One, and sorry to be this person, but it's just the truth. If our God, I nearly swore. If our story bombs out, right, we need a backup now. So it's wonderful to be able to go and see, whether it's on my phone or whether it's in my email or whether it's in my contact list. Okay, I can reach out to Lerato, to Brenda. I can try them. I might get a yes here, right? So yes, we do rely on you guys. Also, you have access to amazing experts, and I'm gonna reference a press release that I got this morning that I said yes to. And Molly was so clever. She said she was talking around, this gas leak that happened in Joburg last week, right? And then now the subsequent earth tremor that happened. And so the press release that she sent me is around, are South Africans covered for earthquakes? I know it's an insurance pitch, I get that, but that's one of those creative angles that I appreciate. So the opportunity to build those relationships is definitely there. I love what you said about, is there room for us to approach you guys? It doesn't happen very often, but I do have some diehard friends that I will do anything for. And yeah, we have a good relationship, and they can ask me anytime and I can ask them anytime. So that's great. It does get tricky sometimes. I'll give you an example. We like on our show to do a lot of legal content or legal explainers. What does the law say? And I know, I'm not going to drop names, there are some agencies that are really, really apprehensive to have their experts take a whole lot of questions that haven't been prepped, questions that are just off field. So I understand that, because you don't want the guest to be left in the lurch, right? But that makes for some of the best radio that you ever get. It's organic, it's conversational, it's flowing, and listeners feel comfortable enough asking those quote unquote stupid questions, just because we've said the lines are open. Ask whatever you want to your heart's content. I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
I think if I can just add on there, what Amy said earlier is so important, that, you said, get to know me first. And I think as PR practitioners, especially like in our very high pressure environments that we operate in, it's actually such a smart way to know who speaks on who, and not, cast the net wide. Yeah, that was the term that was used. It does take time. It does take a lot of relationship building. But actually, at the end of the day, I know that if I've got a legal client, I go straight to Amy. I'm not going there, and it'll be a secured yes. If we want to talk about business and SMMEs and how they're doing, I'm going straight to Keneilwe, and it'll be a guaranteed yes if they have not covered the topic before. So I do think that in some cases you can have maybe a general press release, but then there are platforms that you can use, I believe, to upload, and then information can get taken from there. But spending the time really to just get to know doing your research as a PR practitioner will help you out so much. To say, okay, this is the kind of show Amy's normally in at around this time. So we even have like an extensive roster to say that we don't call Amy during this time. We call it, and we have those conversations, and we jot it down. It's part of our media list to say that this is the best time. Because to be quite honest, I don't have time to waste. I don't want to call Amy and she's like, straight from my show, I have a debrief strat session. Please call me later, and then I'm gonna forget to call her. So I think being more targeted with your approach will give you better chances. And also, I think you guys can come in on this one. A journalist will respect you a bit more because you found the time to see what their show is about, or what they write about if it's print, and also B, you're calling them at a time where they are probably putting together the show, so you might be assisting them, and it's a bit more respect in that regard. So I think that's quite important as well. And for us, I think I always like sending emails first. I don't just believe in sending people WhatsApps, because I also hate being sent WhatsApps by strangers, because that's over familiarity. And that's also, I think, a breach of privacy to a certain extent. So do things the proper way, because at the end of the day, we're still at work. Send an email. If Keneilwe is not responding to my email, then I'll call her. hopefully on an office line. If I don't have an office line, because a lot of people in media at this point are also working from home, then I'll call her. Hi, Keneilwe, how are you? My name is so-and-so, and get straight to the point. So-and-so from this place, I sent you an email about X, Y, and Z. Have you seen it? Oh, no, see, I haven't checked my mails. Then we have that engagement. And then maybe she opens it while we're on the phone and she's like, it's not really working for me. Also can't give you an angle. So I think it just the intentionality of it and the razor sharp focus and also just being professional. I don't think, unless we're friends, yes, there are some friends of mine in the media where I can just send them WhatsApps, but I think we shouldn't also forget those steps because people sleep. There's a friend of mine from the SABC. He always laughs when I call him at 10 a.m. He's like, you're calling me at ungodly hours. But that's because he gets to work at 4 a.m. And then from 10 to 12, that's his nap time. And in as much as we're friends, I do not contact him during his nap time because he started working at 3 a.m. So I think that's also very important to note how we work together to just form that beautiful relationship. And then over time, you can actually get the media to come to you as a PR practitioner and be like, Siba, I'm looking for this. It happens to us at least once a week, whether it's 10 p.m., we will jump and be like, yeah, because we got client deliverables at the end of the day. But then that's how you form that trust and that's how you end up forming that relationship. And then it then helps you that you've got a good relationship with media as a PR practitioner, which you need because you've got clients that you need to service and you've got deliverables that need to be met.
100%. I just wanted to add on to Megan's question a little bit, just to kind of create a sense of accountability on our sides as practitioners as well. It's our job at the end of the day to remain proactive and find new ways to try and form these relationships and synergy with media, to have them know who we are and what our clients or the brands that we're working on are about. So, for instance, if I can just think top of my mind, we can't always expect the journalists to know who our clients are or what the brands are. So if you want to form that relationship, a good start is maybe just a simple emailer to Keneilwe and saying, hey, Keneilwe, my name is Lerato from HLS. This is a list of my clients. This is what they can talk to. Hit me up whenever you need a person who can actually speak to these talking points that I've suggested. Trust me, that's how I've built some of my relationships. That's how I've had a person calling me maybe months later and saying, hey, Lerato, I remember you mentioned you have a client in the energy space. We're talking load shedding. So that's how I think we can also start building that synergy and that connection and forming friends in the media landscape, not only just sending and casting a press release far and wide, but actually just giving them what your clients can talk about. When they see the use for it, if it's not that urgent, they'll get back to you. But if it is urgent, then we can use what Sibabalwe and Keneilwe and Amy are suggesting for us as PR practitioners.
Lerato, I like what you said in terms of, sharing a list of clients, because really that would be amazing. We are constantly looking for people to be featured on our shows, and sometimes you don't even know where to go. So having that list would really, really be ideal. There's one thing that I also wanted to touch on. My colleague Nonto was invited to a meet and greet session by a PR agency, right? And they had a client that was in the SME space, right? The SME, the client had an SME incubator. So the other challenge that we find ourselves in is the fact that then the PR agency would expect us to feature all the SMEs in the incubator. The risk with that is that as journalists, we need to remain impartial. We cannot be seen to be favoring one incubator over the other, right? So sometimes you find some PR agencies thinking, but you featured 2, why can't you feature 5 more, 10 more, or, that then has an impact on our editorial integrity, because we might be accused of being biased, from one client to the other. So it's also things that we find ourselves having to explain to some PR practitioners that, yes, as much as we will accept some of the suggestions, some we can't dwell on, simply because we have to be seen as impartial and as objective as possible. So it's not that we don't love you guys, we love you to bits, but there are certain restrictions as well with, in terms of ethics, editorial ethics that guide us in the process that we also need to be conscious of whenever we invite guests and clients to.
Can I just jump onto that? On that same note about revisiting a topic or revisiting an angle or redoing the story, guys, it's the same story. We know it's the same story. Please don't gaslight me and say it's it's not, it's the same story. And sometimes I can make that happen and revisit the story or revisit an angle, right? But other times I can't. And I have a presenter that is not stupid either, that is like, but I then did this 2 weeks ago. Why do you want to do the story again? So we do try our best as well. When there's a request to us to revisit or relook or whatever, sometimes we can grant it, sometimes we can't. And then please be confident in your call or your email. If you are not confident in the story, I'm not going to be confident in the story. If I'm getting a hi, Amy, I don't know if you saw my email. I said, no, guy, come. Let's be alive, let's be vibey, let's be positive, let's be you're gonna win much more than an unconfident, I don't know if you like this kind of call. And then list of clients, that's the one for me. In fact, list of guests, if you have we are always looking for fresh voices, fresh experts, right? And we don't always find them. So if you have someone that's I don't know, an environmental lawyer, but she's never been on air. Bring her, let's do it. To have a fresh voice is always better than to have the same boring regular guest.
Thank you so much for that, ladies. I saw a question in the Q&A. It's from Lesego Malete that says, when it comes to attending media events, when is it decided that a journalist can attend the event? And I think we do know that certain newsrooms have sort of shrunk, so there's fewer people in the newsroom. So, I mean, how does it work when it comes to attending events? I mean, you'd find that sometimes you'd invite a journalist to an event or an editor, and they'd say, I can't come, but send me a press release afterwards and let's take it from there. So what makes you guys, go out and attend a particular event?
Okay, it's a very tough one, Brenda, because, from my side, I'll tell you this. We don't cover events per se, like I was mentioning earlier, we've gotten to a point where we also need to look at the commercial side of things and see how we monetize certain content, right? So it really just depends on the event, for example. So let's say, for example, here at BDTV, there's an event that's hosted by the South African Reserve Bank, talking inflation, and definitely I'm going to pack my bags and go there. So it just depends on the type of event it is, the expectation from the media house or the media practitioner or the journalist, what it is that is expected from them. Are you expecting them to just be there, as an attendee, or do you expect a story? I prefer in most cases for the invite to be as detailed as possible. I'd like you to come through. I'm thinking there's an angle here that we can explore in terms of 1, 2, 3, and then I'd be able to say, okay, I'm not able to attend, but we can do this. Or, okay, I will attend, but it's something that we can't cover because it's not tied with what we offer on the channel or something like that. So for me, it's always important for the invite to be as detailed as possible. Then, it helps, on the plan of action in terms of whether you're able to attend or not.
For me, definitely, is there a commercial interest there? Is there a story interest there for the show? Could it work? But also, can I get there quickly after work? Sometimes it's as simple as that for me. Your event is in the middle of the day, 12:30. It's not going to happen, babes. We are working, we are plotting deadlines. It's not going to happen. We don't even have a lunch break where we can be like, peace out, I'll be back in an hour. It's not happening. So yeah, if the time suits me, that's something I would attend. And I love going to events because I love meeting people. But I really appreciate what Keneilwe said about being clear about what your intention is, in the sense of, if you expect an interview, by virtue of me attending this event, then please say so. Then at least we know where we both stand. But also be open to, I have colleagues at work that would love to attend this. Can I send this invite to them? Are you open to that? Because not just interns at our office, but like there's so many amazing people in our space that would just love this, and it's a fresh idea for them. So if you are open to that, let me know, then I will happily share it with my colleagues. We don't cover events, just as she mentioned, in that way, because there isn't, yeah, the newsrooms have really shrunk. We don't do it in that manner anymore. Yeah, it's more, if it, with regards to events, it would be like a reflection after the fact, if I'm honest.
Thank you so much for that, Amy. We've got about 8 minutes left, so let me just move on to our next Q&A. There's an interesting one here from Tlholoe. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. Sorry if I'm not. But it says, what strategies do you use for building and maintaining strong relationships with clients or partners? And I think between Lerato, Siba, and I think that's more directed at us. So I think I'll go last, and you guys can just share some of your tips as to the strategies or kind of like activities, or how you go about it.
I think I touched on one of them when I was speaking about the, that email where you're just introducing yourself and what your clients can speak to. So that's probably the first one you would go for. But as of recently, like Amy and Keneilwe mentioned how they barely ever have time to even go grab lunch. And, when you formed a relationship, for instance, Amy, I just recently invited Amy for coffee. And in as much as that might be a strategic move for me to say, hey, listen, I have these clients who can speak to this, but it's also kind of getting to know the journalist and what their interests are, and just finding more about them outside of that space, the workspace, which can be so daunting and draining. So besides those two that I've mentioned, it's also just extending grace and being very respectful to their working hours. It's being very respectful of their privacy on spaces like WhatsApp or Instagram and Twitter, avoiding those things and just reaching out to them in the most professional manner, which is what? Email, LinkedIn, and phone calls. And I think that's just the basis, the foundation on how people can also respect you and want to engage with you more. You don't want to spam people and chase them away, and now you have a deadline and you can't even reach out to a Keneilwe and Amy because you've just gotten on their last nerve. So just being very, very respectful, it will create that mutual synergy, I believe. Siba, you can add on.
I don't really think there's that much to add on, but I think just people skills. Hey, it really just boils down to that at the end of the day, which is, I mean, the things that you've touched on now: being professional, respecting people's privacy, just general etiquette. I don't think there's anything else that I can add, because I think what you said basically covers it. Well, I know it covers it from my side.
Thanks for that, Siba. I think for me, a strategy that I've adopted is just understanding what the journalist covers, and almost like a personalization, right? So the spray and pray approach doesn't work. Like BC seeing a press release, never ever, it doesn't work anymore. Back then it did, it doesn't anymore. So it's now tailor making your messaging. So although I'll be landing the same content throughout, and sharing the same thing, but it's just tailor making it for each person. So my pitch to Amy is going to be completely different to my pitch to Keneilwe, which will be completely different to an editor at News 24. So I think as PR practitioners, it's us not being lazy, to go and do the extra work, personalizing your emails. I mean, I've got a stalking thing where I stalk a person and I look at what they cover firstly. I look at their interests as well, but you know, just to make it a bit more relatable and a bit more personal. So when I pick up the call, I'm like, oh my goodness, Amy, I loved that red coat you had on this weekend. You know, it breaks the ice a bit. And then I'll be like, by the way, this is one of my clients. Here's the angle I'm thinking. Will it work for you? And like you said, Amy, I think for me, the key takeout here is to always be confident in the story that you're trying to land. I think I can't expect you to cover something when I'm not confident about it. And that goes back to us as PR practitioners, understanding the core business and the core impact of our clients. If I don't understand what one of my clients does, how am I going to land it to you? So it's constantly making sure that we are upskilling ourselves, so we can be able to land our client stories in the most effective way possible. I think we are kind of reaching a close, and I don't know if everyone could give us like a 1 minute kind of closing offline before we leave the webinar.
Yeah, I actually just wanted, I think what will be helpful, sorry, especially if there are, you know, students in this webinar, if there are people who are fresh to the industry, and we're all speaking about confidence and they're only just they're on their toes literally. So I think our parting words, what would be best is if our media and everybody that's in here can just leave their 2 cents or their advice to these people who are up and coming, and on how they can tackle this industry and how they can be the best PR practitioner, you know, something along those lines.
So I was an intern once myself, so we've all been there. We've all had the learner sticker, right? I actually appreciate honesty works for me. If you say, I'm new at this, I'm a little bit scared, please can you advise me? Is this something you're open to? I'm gonna be like, yeah, sure, babes, let's talk. Don't worry, this is what you do, blah, blah, blah. I'm very, very open to being that person. I'm sure Keneilwe as well. We're not monsters, but the 2 things I just want to add. One is sometimes the head of sales is not necessarily the best person to talk to. For us in radio, it's about great conversations, right? And you'll be surprised. Sometimes can't even think of head of strategy could be a person that's fantastic on air just because they have a more nuanced look at things, right? Sometimes head of sales can be very much bogged into the numbers and into selling things, and that's not always lovely on air. And then be honest with us about what your guest can or your client can or can't talk about. Don't say they can speak about, I can't even think of a topic right now, but yeah, they need to know their thing, right? Otherwise it really falls flat, and then the listener hears that this guest isn't as educated on this topic, and the presenter feels it as well. So yeah, that's the only other thing I would add.
Absolutely, Amy. That is so true. I mean, the person that you send through for an interview is very key in terms of making and breaking that interview. And you know, we shouldn't take it for granted that the viewers don't know the difference. Viewers are really smart and they can see it right through someone who is just you know, coming in for a glorified advertorial space. So it's really important to send someone who will have the more technical knowledge than, you know, just a comms person or a marketing person that's going to come for a sales pitch. And in terms of, you know, the interns that are coming in, if anyone knows me, I love training. I love imparting knowledge. I love building, you know, confidence and helping, you know, someone channel their careers. What I would suggest happen is that, you know, as PR professionals, in terms of your interns, don't leave them out in the lurch and just throw them out to the wolves, because, you know, the journalists will chew them. We differ. I'm more softer. I think I take Amy's approach, where I would say, look, if you are not knowledgeable of what you're doing, if you're not sure, just be straightforward and say, I'm not sure. then, you know, we know how to move. You know, I'm always willing and able to sort of explore different angles, because if you come in cold, not explaining that you know nothing, I'm just gonna think this person is just wasting my time, you know, because they didn't do proper research, only to find out the person is an intern and they're learning their way. So as well, I think you also have a tough task of becoming their mentors and, you know, helping them through in terms of through this process of learning the ins and outs of PR and how to deal with journalists and media practitioners.
So just from a PR perspective, if you are starting out in the PR world, biggest thing, network till you can't network anymore. And then once you're done with that, network some more. You know, it's also very important to build an ecosystem around you and a network around you of other PR professionals. Latching onto other people and latching onto their networks is possibly the best thing that you can ever do, because they also then impart knowledge on you. So as a PR practitioner, always make sure that you've got a good, solid network and people around you that are in PR, that have been in PR, even if you're all starting out, so that you can learn and make mistakes. So sometimes you don't have to make those mistakes if you surround yourself with seasoned PR practitioners. And then when it comes to if you're starting out and you want to build relationships with the media, nothing is better than doing your research to make sure that you're intentional, you're going to the right kind of people, and you know, you don't end up looking like you didn't do your research before you reach out to someone. But it really is about it's a people skills, it's a human skills. Perfect that and you should be perfectly fine. We were all there at some point. We didn't have media contacts, so that's just my 2 cents.
Well, I think that's it for today. I think there is merit in us having a follow-up session to this, just to delve in deeper and talk about, you know, what are the do's and don'ts a bit more. How do you land, or how do you craft a stronger pitch? And maybe also to get into some of your frustrations as media, because we do know that those change on a case-by-case perspective or basis rather. But yeah, I think that's it from our side. Lerato, I don't know if you had any closing remarks.
I think you've covered it, and I definitely agree that we possibly need a follow-up session, because there are just so many questions. You know, people are hungry for information. People are interested in building these relationships and actually just maintaining them, because as we mentioned in the beginning, we both need each other. It might be a love-hate relationship, but we both need each other and depend on each other so much. So thank you so much, ladies. Thank you to everybody that also joined and attended, and all those questions that brought forward some insights. But yeah, that's it from my side.
No more hate, I promise. No more hate. I've dropped
Much
my
more
email.
love, no more hate.
We invite guys.
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.